Questions are being asked after a father and son were arrested on terror charges in Ontario. The pair were nabbed earlier this month, and now MPs are planning hearings to determine how the immigration system let in people who were ultimately charged with plotting a terrorist act. I'm Dave Breakenridge, and this is 10-3. Toronto Sun politics reporter Bryan Passifiume joins me to discuss what we know about the case so far, the political fallout for the government, and what upcoming parliamentary hearings hope to uncover. Don't forget you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, even on YouTube. I hope you can leave us a rating, a review, and tell your friends about the show. So Bryan, Canada's immigration system, which is already under the microscope because of other issues relating to things like housing and the number of people coming into Canada, is facing increased scrutiny in the wake of an alleged terror plot. And we can get into some of the political fallout from that in a moment. But I guess for starters, what can you tell us about the arrest of Ahmed Fouad Mostafa El-Didi and his son Mostafa?
Well, it was a bit of an unusual situation. We all first heard about it when the police north of Toronto announced that they had arrested El-Didi, father and son duo, in a hotel room in Richmond Hill, which is a city just north of Toronto. Now, they've been charged with a variety of charges supporting terrorism, things like that. The police found a machete and an axe in their hotel room. I believe they also found an ISIS flag in there, and there was some sort of suggestions that they may have recorded a video before they were arrested. It's really kind of a troubling and concerning situation. And I think adding to that is the government's unwillingness to really talk about it. This is a very sensitive case, and I'm sure the last thing that the government and the Crown wants is for this case to be thrown out because someone spoke out of turn. So, which is why everybody's being quiet about it. But we're facing what could have been billed a large terror attack in Canada's largest city, targeting an unspecified community. A lot of people have sort of assumed that they're going to be targeting Jews. Anti-Semitism has become a huge problem in Canada since the October 7th attacks. But there was a lot of questions that still remain to be answered about what exactly led up to these arrests. What we do know is that it was France that actually tipped off Canada about the pair of them. So it seems to be that their plans were definitely gaining traction outside of Canada as much as within it as well.
Do we know what charges that they're actually facing? Is it planning a terror incident? What criminal code charges are they facing here?
Yeah, the two have been charged with terrorism and conspiracy to commit murder. They're also facing charges about an assault, to the furtherance of a terror organization. And what that's related to is that these allegations that the elder El-Didi, 62-year-old Ahmed El-Didi, allegedly took part in a ISIS torture video. You remember those about 10 years ago? There was always these horrible, horrible videos coming out of Iraq, showing what ISIS does to people that they don't like, captured soldiers, alleged spies, non-Muslims. And he's alleged to have taken part in a video that saw a potential spy dismembered with a sword. I have not seen the video. I watched a lot of the ISIS videos when they first came out. I don't remember this one, but there seems to be some sort of evidence that he took part in this. And this video was allegedly produced in 2015, which was a little bit before the El-Didis immigrated to Canada.
Do we know how someone with ties to the Islamic State, or alleged ties, managed to gain entry into Canada as well as being granted citizenship? Or is that one of the pieces of this that the government is not really saying a lot about at this point?
That's the central question that concerns not only everyday Canadians, but also politicians as well. And it was that exact question that prompted the Conservatives to call for the House Public Safety and National Security Committee. All the committees are idle for the summer, obviously. They sparked a call early this month to reconvene the committee over the summer to look into that exact issue. What failed? What processes that are in place to prevent ISIS terrorists from not only entering Canada as tourists to carry out attacks, but also enter Canada as someone posing to be a legitimate immigrant. In this case, they immigrated to Canada, became permanent residents, and eventually at some point, became Canadian citizens. So really, that is the central question. That I think that is the $1 million question that everyone wants to answer. What failed? What in our security and immigration process let us down that, these two were able to enter Canada and become citizens without anybody batting an eyeball.
We'll be right back. Now, as you said, this created such controversy that some MPs cut short their summer vacations to convene a hearing of the Public Safety and National Security Committee to discuss the issue. They met last week. What was the nature of the conversation of the committee last week? Was it to actually hear testimony, or was it to kind of work out what they're going to hear or how they're going to proceed with this issue?
Yeah, it was kind of a housekeeping kind of thing. They wanted to sort of set sort of their framework for what these meetings will look like. It was the Conservatives that came forward with this proposal, and at the time, I remember talking to some people when House Leader Andrew Scheer and Luc Berthold announced that they were doing this, is that they were some indications that some of the opposition parties would be on board. The problem is that the Liberals have a majority on the committee, so if there was any sort of work that wanted to get done that was outside of the Liberals' agenda, how they wanted the committee meeting to go, then the Conservatives needed all parties to be on board, and eventually that happened. The NDP got on board with the Conservatives, and up until the day of the committee meeting, it was a big question mark about who, if the Bloc would also get on board. And sure enough, they got on board with the Conservatives' move. So, the Conservatives have the opposition have a majority on the committee now, so they're able to kind of help steer which way the committee goes. And I was watching the meeting, and I was really surprised at sort of they of course didn't really let on, but there was a lot of cooperation across all parties. Even the Liberals were on board with seeing what happened and what went wrong, because as much as the Liberals are trying to deny it, this pretty much happened at their watch. During the meeting, they took delight in blaming CBSA cuts by the Harper Conservatives a decade ago for this, but really and that's why I think that's one of the questions that's also going to be answered by these meetings is, what exactly was the timeline that this happened? There's a lot of finger pointing right now, but, it's, there's so little Canadian political unity in this country right now that I think that this was a small example of the parties, at least on the surface, trying to work together. Did opposition parties get what they wanted out of the meeting? They did. They, there was a little bit of wrangling back and forth about the agenda, but what they want to do is they want to call a variety of people. They want to call obviously the public safety minister, the immigration minister. They want to call the head of CSIS, heads of CBSA, and other deputy ministers and lackeys and hangers-on of the government that may be able to shed some insight on what happened. So, the Liberals were able to set the agenda, and the Conservatives and the other parties were able to set the agenda, and the Liberals pretty much had no choice but to go along with it. But there wasn't a lot of dissension, so I think it was a decent compromise between what each of the parties want. Mm-hmm. And when do we actually get to hear testimony? I think a lot of Canadians are left wondering, well, what is the government going to have to say for itself, or what? Like, not just like the Liberals, but the apparatus of the government, the bureaucracy. So when can we expect to hear questioning of the bureaucrats or of the federal government on this issue? Monday. The first meeting is on the 26th. No word yet on who's going to testify, but they were able to determine there's going to be 6 meetings in total where they're able to get testimony. 2 of those meetings have to take place this month. So probably next week, you're going to see the first 2 of those meetings. And then after that, it's kind of up in the air right now. The House doesn't convene until, about a month from now. So there's a little bit of time to get some business done and some testimonies in between now and when the House reconvenes after their summer break. Mm-hmm. And for the government's part, I know early on there was a lot of silence from the government. And obviously, as you said, the federal government nor the police would want to see this tossed out of court because people are speaking out of turn. But our immigration minister was asked about the LDDs late last week with the Liberals on the hot seat on this file. What did Mark Miller have to say the government was prepared to do? What did Miller have to say the government had to say for itself?
and how did he try and kind of mitigate Canada's fears about this issue?
Minister Miller said something I think that a lot of Canadians were hoping he would say, expecting him to say, that the wheels are in motion to revoke the LDD citizenship. Obviously it was, there's certain measures in place when you apply for permanent resident status and citizenship. I've helped my wife and other people fill out this paperwork before, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And a lot of questions they ask directly is, have you been, involved with some sort of overseas terror or violence or anything like that? And, obviously, I don't think anybody's expecting an ISIS terrorist to check yes to that box. But at the same time, it's like, is that the only safeguard Canada has? Is Canada's only safeguard the honesty of the person applying for citizenship or for permanent resident status? I think that's what's going to be a big question there. And I think that the government at this point has no choice but to revoke a citizenship. If these allegations are proven true in court and he's guilty, then this is definitely not a human being that we want as a Canadian citizen. But it's one of the few times the government has really broken silence about this. But so far they're keeping pretty mum.
Now, obviously, the vast majority of people coming into Canada are not ISIS sympathizers. They're not people who may have links to the Islamic State or other terror groups. And I don't think that needs to be made clear, but it warrants saying. But because this is such a fraught issue in Canada right with immigration, like, do you get the sense that the federal government is kind of been put on its heels a little bit on the immigration file and how it's going to handle it going forward? And this kind of doesn't help their cause in terms of the immigration file?
One would hope. We're dealing with a very, this government kind of reminds me of the last week of school before summer vacation, kind of listless. You've got a government that's on its last legs. You've got a government that, if poll numbers are to be believed, will not survive the next election. You have a government led by a prime minister who, is one of Canada's most unpopular politicians in history. You've got a government that has been caught, with its pants down several times on a number of very, very serious issues, ArriveCan being one of them, the pandemic response. This is just the kind of the latest scandal that this government is having to deal with. And, some observers are saying, take a number if you want the government to be contrite about this. It's, one would hope that this would lead to positive changes to our immigration system. But I think a lot of people are just saying that, whoever takes over for prime minister after his government is voted out of office, I think has their work cut out for them to not only deal with this failing, but a lot of the other failings that have cropped up in the past 10 years.
Yeah. I guess we'll see what the testimony reveals about this issue in the coming weeks, and we'll see what the political fallout is from there on forward. Bryan, thanks for your time.
Anytime. Thank you.
10-3 is produced by Sean Knox. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Thanks to my guest, Bryan Passifiume. More from him at TorontoSun.com. I'm Dave Breakenridge. Thanks for listening.